So, welcome, Katharina. It's awesome having you here. We met in Aveiro, and where you are a professor. And we talked about something completely different, and recognized we have an overlap in our interest and passion topics. And I would like to give you the stage first. Thank you very much for being here and spending the time and introducing your approach to life design. And I will post information about Katharina and the book in the chat. But please introduce yourself first, Katharina, and thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bettina, and thank you to all of you. Thank you for the invitation. This is really interesting and important to me. I was not aware of this group until I met Bettina, and I was not aware of these efforts that are being made towards life design. So to me, it is a privilege to be here with you today. I'm currently a lecturer, a senior lecturer at the University of Aveiro in the area of sciences and technologies of communication, but my background is communication design. And due to that background and due to the efforts that I've gone through whilst in industry, I spent 6 years in London, where I was leading a master's course provision within the area of branding and advertising. And that's where everything started for me, from this perspective of looking into things that you guys call life design and that I was calling something else. So without further ado, I would like to share the screen if you are okay with that. And let me just grab the right window. This should be it. Can you guys see what I'm projecting? Is that okay? Yeah, good. So what I would like to bring you today is something that I have been working on in the last 8 years or so, which is a framework to help students, namely students. Well, it's been thought for students to anticipate impact of whatever projects they get involved with. And the main idea was that I was experiencing some kind of dryness and concerns from the students in terms of the projects that they were accepting. Some of them were being proposed, not self-negotiated. And these projects were draining them, and they were feeling miserable because they were doing projects that were not exactly the projects that they would like to do. And when I say projects, and given the fact that I was dealing with master's provision, I'm talking about master's projects mostly. So for these guys, they were working on projects that were proposed by the lecturers, but not necessarily aligned to what they had in mind and what they would like to do. And what I was feeling was that I had a cohort of students that were going through some sentiments of being miserable through the time of getting those projects done. So one of the things that I found very quickly with this provision of students that I was dealing with whilst in London was that they were very, very aware of the fact that there is no planet B, there is no alternative, and they wanted to do things that would have some kind of contribution to the fact that we all know that there is climate change going on, and there's lots of concerns about sustainability and so on. So one of the things that, being a designer, I thought would be really interesting to bring to these students, because they were studying branding and advertising, and they would come in all shapes and forms and colors. I had students from philosophy, from mechanical engineering, biology, graphic design, fashion design, management, marketing, you name it. It was just, they were coming from every corner in the world and with whatever background you can imagine. So they were very diverse, and the only thing that they had in common was this kind of proposition that we have to do something about the world, and how can branding do something about the world? So I introduced them to the First Things First manifesto, The first edition back in the days, quite old, but then there was a reviewed or a revised version in 2000, and then we had a new revised version of this manifesto, which has been signed by great names in terms of what represents the design sphere and industry in 2014. So that's the most recent version of this manifesto. And basically what they say is that they recognize that they have been working for brands that have been, to some extent, trying to commercialize everything and sell everything and sell without the concerns about what these sales are going to lead us all. And you know, from packaging to all the materials that are being used, from the idea of things becoming obsolete 2 years after being sold or being started, all that is a concern to these designers, and they came up with these kind of manifestos that were really inspiring these students, whatever background they had. So another thing that was really important to me and these students, I was dragging them into all the events that I could go to that were somehow related to these concerns about how we live and how we can bring some kind of disruption to the way we're doing things. Were these meetings that were being organized by purpose disruptors. Purpose disruptors have been it is a group that has been assembled by advertising professionals that gave up their brilliant, magnificent careers in the advertising industry. Many of them, you know, senior art directors with really interesting accounts and relevant responsibilities when it comes to big brands. And they were just fed up with the fact that they were somehow contributing to not a better world, but precisely to the opposite. So they were, the whole thing started when they started to say, no, I don't want to work with tobacco companies, and no, I don't want to accept this account because it is an oil company. And suddenly they were being set aside, and they decided this is no longer a place for me. So they just resigned their jobs, and they came up with something that was this group. Basically, the purpose disruptors would gather every month in a pub at night, and basically they would discuss what can we do to make the world a better place, using the resources and the tools and the rhetorics that are known to advertising. So that would be the most interesting part of all these meetings. And it was really eye-opening to me and to these students that I was bringing with me, to find that they were doing this not just for the world, but above all, they were doing this because they had children and they had these very immediate concerns about the next generations of their own blood and flesh. So what we found, or what became quite obvious to me, was that they were concerned about something that was beyond them in two different kind of ways. They were being both altruistic and they were being egoistic, in the sense that they had a very self-concern about their own family, but they were also concerned about how this is going to impact the entire community around us. And when I became aware of this ideal, of this positioning, basically, that these guys were sharing, this was very, very very present in whatever conversations and discussions they had. It became clear that we would have to follow some kind of methods. So when I joined this group that was very tuned towards this idea, it became clear that a method was missing, and we should try and find something that would work best for us in order to come up with feasible solutions. So the group adopted theory of change as a generic way of doing things. And now there is a lot of stuff going on around purpose disruptors. They have been doing a lot of interventions. They have been very active. And I'm no longer taking part of these conversations at the pubs because I'm no longer in London. But I'm still always trying to catch up with whatever is going on. So obviously, this all comes attached to something that has been, in my opinion, brilliantly advertised by the United Nations, as opposed to what they had before. The Millennium Goals were not as known as the SDGs are, and obviously, whatever my students were now trying to engage with were somehow aligned to this idea that we can guide ourselves by these ideals or these big challenges that are brought to us by the United Nations and in the shape of these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And even if they are too broad to some of us, each one of them has specific targets that we can use to better operationalize our ideas and our problems and our approaches towards life and towards the projects that we want to take on and embrace. So the main thing here is an actual concern towards making a real impact. I really wanted the students to engage with projects that they could see they would have some kind of impact. Even if it was just a tiny little bit of impact, they would have to feel that impact happening. Be it altruistic, being egoistic, it didn't really matter. It would have to have some kind of, they would have to feel that they were somehow contributing to a better place, even if it's just their place, their home, their neighborhood, their city, their region, their country, and so on. Now, again, what the students were very commonly asking, are these goals realistic? Can we really tackle these goals? Can we attain them by 2030? Because 2030 is really around the corner. Can we all do something about these goals? Can we as citizens do something about these goals? Can we engage with them? How can we think about our projects, which are some of them quite mundane in terms of these goals? How can we align things in our lives towards these goals? And one of the frameworks that we were using to tackle challenges as the challenge that we were facing according to the SDGs by the United Nations was design thinking. So design thinking was a framework that I found to be particularly useful for these students, again, with very diverse backgrounds, with very different interests towards a career, but all of them very concerned about communication, branding, and advertising. Design thinking became a way of looking into these sustainability development goals because of its broad spectrum and approach. The problem with design thinking is that it is somehow attached to the double diamond. I'm not aware, I don't know if you are aware of the double diamond. It is a framework that's been proposed by the British Council, the British Design Council, sorry, in 1995, if I'm not mistaken. There is a revised version these days. But basically, what the double diamond says is that we start by discovering, and that implies some divergent thinking, and hence the diamond opening up towards divergence, which is where we discover the problem we have in hand. And then we define the problem in our own words after we've done the first set of research. And that is somehow aligned to the stages empathize and define of design thinking. So in the middle, when the two diamonds meet, we are expected to have insights about whatever we're going to do. And then it's the developing stage starting, which is, it means diverging again. So we can start having ideas, we can start prototyping, and then we converge into something that may look like a final solution, converging into, you know, a set of tests that are feasible, that are doable, that are somehow manageable within the time frame that we have available. Now, the thing here is that when I brought this framework to the students, for them to work around the SDGs, which were very broad and challenging and very abstract ideas of we should work around a better place, a better life, and a better world, this was not entirely clear to them how we were going to do this, because the double diamond and design thinking focus on the how and the what. So when we have a problem space and we think, or when we define how we're going to be dealing with people around us and how we're going to be looking into the problem, we're thinking in how terms. And then when we move on to the solution space, we are looking into what we're going to get as a solution, as a response to the problem that we identified. Now, what I found the students were doing, and what I see most of us do in life, as in being just a human, is that we tend immediately towards the what. So when we face a problem, it is very humane to look into an answer immediately without doing the homework, the background work that is necessary. We want quick responses. We want quick answers. So the what is the easiest way, and the students were not doing the how. The problem on top of that is that the SDGs, which I wanted them to think about and relate with, and to some extent see how they could have some kind of impact attached to these SDGs, are these big ideas, these challenges, and these kind of calls to action. They are too broad, and we cannot call them problems as yet, because of the abstraction that they carry. So we are at that stage, at a space in which we need to accommodate something else, which is to define the why we want to do this problem, why we want to solve this problem, why we want to go through this kind of project, why do we want to engage with it, why is it relevant to us, why is it relevant to me, why is it relevant to the others. And that was the moment in which I found myself looking into life design without knowing that there was some people calling it life design. Anyway, what I was doing with the students was trying to draw their attention to the importance of looking into the why we're doing things, because it is important to know why we want to engage with things, why we want to feel part of that, and why that is relevant to us as an element that will become part of our life. So once you know the why, you can move on to the how, and then you can find the what. This is what Simon Sinek has been saying to us since 2008 or 2011. I really don't know the exact date of his first edition. But basically, it's all about starting with the why we're motivated towards something in life, how we will be doing to get this done and part of our life, and what is this going to get to us, and what is the outcome that we will get in our life as being part of this project. So basically, the golden circle proposed by Simon Sinek, it's very straightforward, this idea that we should depart from the why. The why is all about knowing the purpose, the motivations, and going back to our beliefs and principles. And studies that he's been mentioning in his work relate this idea that we think in terms of why and also of how as part of a limbic brain exercise, which is where we control most of our decision-making processes, and also gut feelings who have implications in our decision-making. And then the what is something that should come last. It's the result, it's kind of the proof towards the why we want to do things, and the evidence of our resolution towards that initial motivation. And it's naturally attached to a different area in our brain, the neocortex, which is very much attached to the rational bits and ways of doing things. So going back to the double diamond, I'm not exactly saying that I want to change the double diamond that's been proposed by the Design Council in the UK many years ago. But my proposal is that we should think, when we want to think as design being something that can contribute to life, we should include something else, the call to adventure space, which is when we face a challenge that we still don't know what shape it's going to take and what problem it's gonna bring to us exactly. So it is the determined stage. I call it the determined stage. It's the missing D, since the double diamond uses Ds for all its 4 stages. I've called it the determined, which is the moment in which we become aware of our motivations, we become determined towards a certain facet of a challenge, and then we embrace that facet, and then we take it into something that may look like a project. So what I was trying to do with my students basically was making sure that they could feel determined towards that, something that would make them feel enjoying the project or enjoying the problem that they were going to face and try to resolve. It had to include some kind of pleasurable elements to it, but it also had to be meaningful in the sense that they could foresee the immediate outputs and immediate outcomes in their own life. So once the project is completed, the what's in it for me would be evident for the students. So they could design towards their own life, towards their own aspirations. And being a master's student, that would mean most likely finishing the course and getting a job in the industry. And then the impactful bit would be this longer term sort of outcome that has to do with, it's not just about me, it's also about the others. I'm solving a problem that is possibly part of my life, but it's going to be something that is going to resolve a problem to other people. And this went down to me helping them think in terms of principles on how to tackle this determined stage, which comes before the double diamond and all the design thinking exercises. So there are 2 main principles. Principle 1 being that to the designer, the value, which is the why at this stage, is the best known variable. This is what we know. We need to know why we're doing this, why we are trying to engage with such an abstraction, such an idea, such a challenge. Hence, it needs to be represented to the best extent. So the students would have to be able to say what are their motivations and why they wanted to engage with this challenge in particular, whatever that be, in order to subsequently inform both the how and the what. Again, this is linked to the golden circle proposed by Simon Sinek. And then the principle number 2 would be that the value, again, the why, is going to, or if you want the motivation, is going to help describe the purpose, the main purpose, which is the intended final impact. It informs the rationale for taking up a project or activity. The students would become much more, they would become it would be easier for them to communicate their intentions and their motivations. Some of them would struggle in terms of communication on how to put it in words. And it became suddenly much easier for them to know how to explain why they were doing this project and why they could be seen as serious candidates towards the resolution of such a project. And also the why it's going to be at the center of the speculative process that was going to somehow inform the design thinking and the design process that these students would have to go through. Even though they had many different backgrounds, we would all of them would have to go through a design thinking or design informed process. So what I established in a way was a community of students that didn't see themselves as designers, but would initially they wouldn't see themselves as designers, but at the end they would find themselves as people designing for being heroes. And this idea of hero is obviously a metaphor for the main construct behind this this engagement process and strategy that I was trying to get done and solidified throughout the provision, the postgraduate provision, because of the idea that they were solving problems in the world, or they were solving problems in their own communities, or they were solving problems, domestic problems at home, for example. Only that would mean they could call themselves heroes. And this was sitting on this idea that all of them would have to go through a journey. This journey could be their master's project, or it could be finding a job, or it could be planning a holiday, or it could be a family-related kind of journey. They would have to go through some kind of adversities. Nothing comes easy. So that was a really important message to pass on to them. They will be able to assemble a team of allies and resources that they will find useful and important to them. And they will be able to identify the ones that are not. And at the end, they would be able to give back to society once they found that they would find a reasonable answer to the problem that they would choose to go through. And these are the four main steps that are somehow attached to the idea of the hero journey, which is very basically what describes most of well-known storytelling. So if you go back to your stories from when you were very, very young or younger than you are, you would find that this formula is extensively being applied. So this was really easy for the students to sort of resonate with. So the whole thing broken down and bringing this into pieces, it had to do with finding a why and identifying a purpose so that they could design something towards their life in the sense of, let's start with your master's project. Then it had to do with the idea that we had a persona, and the persona was the hero in the first instance, but then we would have another persona, which is humanity. So the hero would have to look into what's in it for me, and then also consider that there are other people around this hero that may be affected, and what's in it for them. And in both cases, it would have to consider the pleasurability, the meaningfulness, and the impactful aspects of designing for these sort of life challenges. And finally, the other thing that the students would have to go through and be prepared for would be that they would have to find themselves always looking into the future. So future thinking it became a real topic. And I was constantly telling them that, presenting them the funnel, the futures tunnel or funnel, depends on how you want to call it. They could look into different possibilities, different plausibilities, and different probabilities. And these are all different ways of looking into the future. There is not a more valid one than the other. It really depends on how they wanted to engage with the projects that they had in mind. Just to give you a good overview of what I was doing with the students, I was initially I would ask them to visualize a good life in the future. So I would go with this through this kind of exercise in which they would look into the future in 10 years' time and anticipate a good life. And we would get the most interesting definitions of good life, you know, things like being surrounded by animals, or you know, being completely free without any kind of politics or religions. They had really interesting views about what a good life was to them. So that was very inspiring to me. I would also guide them through the Ikigai, which I'm sure it's not new to all of you. And then after they had identified their Ikigai, we would go back to the visualization of a good life in the future, and now focusing on the why. Why would we bother to change whatever we have and all the comforts and all the privileges that we have attained so far to get to that idea of a better life in the future? And again, this was really inspiring because they would come with ideas that I would never think of. So breaking down the persona, as I mentioned, there are two main personas: the hero, which is usually the student or the individual trying to plan a better life in the future, and humanity, because whatever this individual is going to do by solving or coming up with an answer to a project will have some kind of impact in the others, and we would expect this impact to be positive, obviously. Now, this is the main framework of what I have been doing and working on. The idea that the hero would find pleasurable moments whilst he's learning and whilst he's considering his current life in a very personal kind of way, considering his or her own interests and motivations, and obviously also considering their professional aspirations, which can be already ongoing, or you know, those that they would expect to have once they finish their courses, when it comes to defining their career identities. And in that sense, we wanted whatever project they would pick to be pleasurable, to be meaningful, because, for example, I would tell them all the time, please bring your projects to your interviews and use them as a showcase of your abilities and your competences. Don't let them in a dark drawer inside your bedroom, because that doesn't make sense. You will spend 8 or 9 or even 1 year working on this project. It doesn't make any sense for you to forget about it. And then obviously I wanted to have that extra dimension of impact towards humanity, where I would guide the students to think in terms of the main dimensions of sustainability, which are economics, environmental, and social. And then the moments into the future, the exercises that we would do would be something like what you can see here. So I would bring them into this moment where they would have to go through different scenarios, as in the evolution case, which was their favorite because it's the easier one, and then the alternative or the exception, or even the what if, which is more disruptive. So this was really to spark the idea that we should think about our future a little bit more, and make use of all the information that we have in the present and all the experience that we have gathered in the past. So the main result was a tool that that I was bringing to the students at a certain moment when they were feeling like, okay, I have an idea. I think this challenge is becoming now a little bit more structured in my way of planning what I intend to do with my studies until completion of this course. I'm just not too sure how to tackle the challenge, how to put it in words. So what I would ask the students, and after the students, some individuals that would come to me that were not studying, but were interested in using this tool for different purposes, was, okay, you have this big challenge, this big idea, which you cannot frame as yet. It doesn't make any sense to you because you haven't done any research yet. But from your experience and from the knowledge that you have gathered so far, what are the main keywords and what are the main problems that you feel are somehow attached to this challenge? And what the students would bring to me was a list of whatever problems they thought would be somehow related to the big challenge that was being brought to them. By the way, I forgot to mention that these challenges would be not just the SDGs, but they could be brought by partners from industry. So we would ask industry to not to bring orders or services that they need to accomplish as part of their business, but broad ideas that the students could engage with in many, many different ways. Things like work on the awareness towards thermodynamics, which was one of the challenges that Bosch brought to us one year. And it's broad enough to be broken down, or to allow being broken down into many different problematics or problematizations, if you want. So the students would, from this broad idea, for example, creating awareness or increasing awareness towards thermodynamics, they would come up with their own problems. This could be related with a certain audience, for example, primary school students, or this is somehow related with a specific market, as in, boilers, or this can be related with whatever they wanted to work on. It could be a geography. Let's create awareness towards thermodynamics in Nigeria, for example. That was actually one of the problems that one of the students brought to me. So because the challenge was too broad, I was asking them to come up with 3 topics maximum, or 3 problems if you want. And they would come up with 3 main ways of looking into that big challenge that they were interested in looking at, or that the partner business or institution was bringing to us as part of the relationship that we had established that in that academic year. And what the students would have to do was to look into the context of their learning as being students. What is the impact that, topic number 1, as you want to look into or creating awareness towards thermodynamics in primary schools, what's the impact that this is going to have on you as an individual, as part of your growth, as part of your learning experience? Is this going to help towards some kind of competencies or skills that you want to develop? Is this going to increase your creativity? Is this going to make you sleep less? Is this going to prevent you from seeing your family over the weekend? So in personal terms, what's the impact that this problem is going to have on you? And they would have to go through each one of the topics. So for example, creating awareness towards thermodynamics in primary schools, or creating awareness towards thermodynamics in Nigeria, or creating awareness towards thermodynamics in the boiler industry. They would have to look into these 3 different projects as possibilities having an impact on their personal life, whilst being a student, whilst learning. And then they would have to do the same exercise when considering their career. Okay, so you are considering primary schools, you are considering Nigeria, and you are considering the boiler industry. Which of these would have the most impact in your career prospects? How is this going to contribute to your professional identity? What impact do you anticipate that each one of these projects is going to have on you when you finish your course and when you want to become a professional in a very certain industry? And then again, the same exercise would be done in a long-term kind of consideration when they can see that whatever solution they would find could be given back to society. So from an economic perspective, if you find a solution for this challenge attached to the idea of going to primary schools or in Nigeria or in the industry of boilers, what's the economic impact that it's going to have? And then again, what's the impact that it's going to have on the environment or even on a social or societal level? Now, what I was finding was that the students would come with lots of insights in most of these boxes. So they could relate with the idea that they were the heroes. They could anticipate that there was another persona beyond them. So the altruistic aspect of it being humanity. They could do a lot of work on the pleasurable aspects of engaging with the project. They couldn't see themselves being miserable, basically. They could come up with lots of ideas in terms of how each one of the projects would help them in their interviews and finding a job or in changing career path or becoming an entrepreneur, for example. And they were being very agile, I would say, in resolving things around social and environmental aspects, but they were not able to go through the economic impact of whatever projects they would find. And this to me was quite alarming because they all defended, or they all said that this is going to be very innovative. Whatever topic I choose, whatever idea I pick, it's going to lead to some kind of innovation. And I would ask them, so how can you say that you're going to engage with a project that involves innovation without considering the economic aspects of innovation? How can you say that this is going to lead to innovation without having economic impact? And then I found that they didn't understand economics. So, or the very idea of what economics mean. So to make life easier to the students, I asked them to think in terms of industry sectors. So let's think of industry sectors. If you engage with this topic in primary school, from an economic point of view, what do you think? What is the sector that you think is going to evolve? So I had to do all this work with them. Oh, maybe I'm going to contribute to education. Oh, well done. That's it. That's a nice sector. Maybe you will. So if you are looking into Nigeria, what is the sector that you will be possibly contributing to? Oh, I will probably be contributing to taxes and benefits. Okay, well, that's interesting. Finances and legal aspects. So when I was kind of nudging them towards thinking towards the impacts that industry might, or the sectors in industry might have, they could come up with some thoughts about the economic dimension. And what this made, or this led to the creation of a knowledge base, because what I was doing with the students was I was creating prompts, basically, for them to think on each of these dimensions. The whole thing started with the economic scenario, which was the most difficult to them. But then I found myself creating all these prompts, or prompting them, nudging them towards thinking about the definition of each one of these scenarios that the canvas includes. So learning, career, economic, environmental, and social. Because some of them not many, not the majority, but some of them would struggle, for example, with the social bit. They couldn't come up with anything around it. And then I found myself gathering all the ideas that I was giving them and the ideas that they were giving me by completing the canvas. And this is how this tool became a much larger tool, which includes not just a canvas, but a set of cards, which I always say it's optional for the individuals to use to help them think on the possible impact, the anticipated impact that each one of the problems that they face may have on them and on humanity in general. Each one of the cards, and this became something that it came later at a later stage. These cards would allow the students to assess by using a very simple Likert scale from -2, which means very negative impact, to +2, which means very positive impact, to assess each one of the prompts that are being brought to them. So I found myself with a student that looked into these cards when they didn't have any sort of evaluation or whatever kind of quantitative way of looking into things, with a set of emoji faces. And basically what this student was doing was he was evaluating or assessing each one of these prompts by resorting to emojis, being the angry one, the ones that would lead to negative impact, and the ones with the big smile, laughing out loud, the ones that would lead to positive impact. So this very qualitative, but already carrying some kind of quantitative element to it, was the spark towards creating this set of cards with the idea of helping students anticipate quantitatively the possible impact that each one of the problems that they might consider would have on their life and on the lives of others. Obviously, the sustainability-oriented cards, which are the economic, the environmental, and the social, are somehow attached to the SDGs. So the students can, by looking into these prompts, they can foresee or they can feel some kind of relation on how one project or one idea or one problematization might lead towards sorting or contributing to 1 or 2 or 3 SDGs, if applicable. And this is how some of them resolve this. So they print out the cards and then they bring them into the canvas and they create connections throughout the scenarios, which is the most interesting aspect of it all. It is when they see that, oh, if I learn this and if I develop this kind of competency, I will be able to, in my future career, do this, which will contribute positively to the environment here and will have some kind of relation with the social aspects that I identified later on. So this was really interesting when I saw the students using these kind of resources and ways of looking into all this that was becoming a huge map. Now, in terms of practical terms, these are the design students. Design students like to use scissors and glue and cards, and they are very plastic. They use Post-its, they scramble the cards, they do all kind of things, always by following the color coding that was that I suggested when I first designed the canvas. Then COVID really hit very strongly and we had to move everything online. Obviously, printing the canvas became a problem. When we were all at home, some of the students didn't have a printer at home and they could leave their places to go out to a printing shop and print the canvas and come up with something that would look like was the initial framework for the exercise, but they could do it. So the whole thing was down to following the color code that was being initially proposed as part of the original design of the canvas, and they would go through this idea of using post-it notes in different colors so that they could anticipate the impact before they committed to a project. These are the multimedia students. The multimedia students really like collaborative platforms, so I had to quickly move on to something that was less paper-based and more online and screen related, both in Mural and Figma. And you can see that, you know, they're using thumbs up, not just the numbers to anticipate the potential impacts that they foresee for their project, but also other elements, iconic and symbolic elements that help them go through, and always the post-it notes very present throughout. These are engineering students. They prefer Excel, which is okay to me. They go through the color coding, so it works. It works to them. They went through all the work of gathering all the prompts, bringing them into the Excel file, and then they evaluate the projects. They use Excel really well, so it works fine for me. If it works for them, it's okay to me. And this is just what I would say. A configuration, or if you want, a map of how I look into the different frameworks that we have been using or that we have been resorting to, and how they are connected ones to the others. So basically, the whole argument goes down to design thinking, the double diamond, the golden circle, and then the hero's journey, which are the ones that are informing the framework that I came up with. And there are some alignments at some point. However, what I say is, what I defend is that neither design thinking or the double diamond is actually considering that moment in which thinking about the why is absolutely vital. And that's why I proposed a determined stage against the double diamond, which is connected to the why on Simon Sinek's Golden Circle, and the idea of initiating the journey and making your initial backup plans on the hero's journey sort of framework, which informs most of our well-known storytelling since Aristotle. And then obviously this roadmap is basically the roadmap that you would find for any innovation project. Any entrepreneurial project would have to go through some kind of similar roadmap, where when you reach the end, you will be possibly considering that you are somehow contributing to society or a community in particular, which means you will be giving back to society. You will throw the boomerang, and the boomerang is coming back not just to you, but to a broader group of people. And the tools that you can see here are all the tools that I would use with my students throughout the process. And this process means when I started leading the module Masters project until they submitted their dissertations or projects, or even internship reports, because some of them would have their master's projects done in a context of industry. So the impact plan is something that appears very much at the very beginning of the process, which is when they need to define their why, knowing their motivations and the ideals that they want to find or to get towards the end. And then it was really interesting to see that the impact plan was being used again towards the end of the process, when the students were being asked to complete their documents, their written dissertations, and to justify or to present a rationale around the output that they had found, that they had achieved. So what they were doing was they were going back to all these prompts that they were finding more interesting or more impactful in the cards that they had completed. And they would bring those with the highest level of anticipated impact to help them, to support them on writing the rationale and the final resolution, or if you want, the final discussion around their projects, which to me was really interesting to see. And then, yeah, this is just a zoom in, because I'm sure you cannot read from the previous one. This led to the creation of a book that sort of gathers everything that was going on throughout these modules around coming up with the initial bits of a project that can be very convoluted, ill-defined, and problematic, because it is so big that nobody can see an easy resolution to it, towards the final answer, where you would complete an idea and you would feel fulfilled, because you accomplished your mission and you came up with some kind of answer, even if it's just a part of the answer that needs to be answered to resolve the whole problem. Now, I'm very happy to say that the book has been commended by Blon Norman, which I'm sure many of you will know. He's a big figure, and I want to say that the impact plan which he recommended my book was launched before his book Design for a Better World. So there is no relationship between one or the other, just some similarities in terms of ideas, but I was not inspired on his book. Maybe he was inspired on mine. That's just me being naive, obviously. There is also a website that supports the whole project. It's the impact-plan.com, where I make the canvas available. The cards can be downloaded as well. There's a couple of insights and instructions around what can be done. And yeah, that was me. Thank you very much for your time. I'm sorry if I took a little bit longer. It's 1 minute post 2, but I'm sure you wanted to have time for Q&A, which means I'm probably derailing here on the timing.
First, thank you so much for all the insights. I stopped taking